This is Support is Sexy, episode 258. Time to get out there and build your support network. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and their lessons to help you take your business and your life to the next level and create something sexy. Here we go. Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so happy to have you here because it just would not be the same without you. And in a recent episode, I talked about in this next year being of the podcast, July 4th was our anniversary. Yay! And I talked about, though, within this next year, being focused on self-care. Now, in some ways, I take pretty good care of myself. I run, exercise every day, do whatever I can to eat healthy, mostly vegan. I have added fish in there a little bit here and there now, but mostly a vegan diet. So there are things that I follow for me that I feel like work well for me in taking care of myself. But I know I can do better. And that is personal self-care and even self-care within my business. I posted about this idea recently on social media, and a lot of women who are my friends and even some women I don't know, but who are friends online, talked about how getting clear or getting focused on their own self-care actually helped their business. Now, that's not the only reason I would do it. It's not the only reason you should do it, but it's a good reason to think about it because we usually are driving so hard in our businesses. I know certainly I do. I drive, I think I've said this before, until I hit a wall and I have to stop, or I get a headache and I have to lay down. And it doesn't have to be like that. Not that I'm looking for balance, but I am looking for harmony within all areas and making sure that I am as passionate about my self-care as I am about the success of my business. So one of the things I've been thinking about lately, since I relocated to Atlanta, I will even say, even when I was in New York, I definitely had a bigger network in New York because I'm from there. I know a lot of fantastic women, men too, but a lot of fantastic women who lived around me in Brooklyn and just in New York in general. So there was no shortage of fabulous people to be around, spend time with, real people who were there with me, same mindset, motivated. They were self-motivated. They motivated me. It was all there. And of course that exists in Atlanta. But I will say, since I've been here, with the exception of a few very close friends here, I have mostly been focused on my business and family. Two great things to focus on, but business, family, and not much else outside of that as far as connections. So part of my self-care practice, and I believe this is an important part, is to make more in-person connections where I currently am. Right now it's in Atlanta, but wherever I go, I want this to be a priority because I do think it is a part of self-care, especially when you are primarily a solopreneur, any kind of entrepreneur, you're creating something. You need to be around people, I always say, who support your kind of crazy. Now, my family, for example, with me, they certainly support me in so many ways. I'm so lucky to have them, my parents especially, but they still don't fully understand what the hell I'm doing. And by that, I mean, why are you choosing this harder road? You have this degree, you have all this experience. Entrepreneurship is hard. Not talking you out of it, but your loved ones, they're usually concerned for you and want you to be at your best and have peace and all of those great things. It's not because they don't believe in you, but usually they're scared for you. For me, I need to be around people who understand this entrepreneurship beast, who have great ideas of ways to do it better, and who support my kind of crazy. And I have to be intentional about connecting with those people. And I can't do that by sitting in a home office and just recording the podcast or just working on my funnels or just doing all the things that I only do online. And I will say it's great because I connect with all of you, of course, through the podcast. You email me, we communicate via email, we communicate on social media. So there are ways that I'm certainly connected, but in-person connection with people who get it, who get me, and who I can, of course, offer support to in some way. So I want to be very intentional about that. And I'm recording it to hold myself accountable, right? I want to be very intentional about that. And I want to share some ways that I'm going to go about it. I would love to hear from you if you have other ideas about it, but ways that have worked for me in the past. And then some of them are ways that I want to try in order to get busy building that support network. So one thing you may have heard people talk about before are masterminds. Now, I was in a mastermind last year, or I guess the year before into last year. It was extraordinary. In fact, it was called the Extraordinary Life Mastermind with Rachel Tenenbaum, who was a guest on the podcast on episode 80. So make sure you go back and listen to that. It was fantastic to talk to her about being a radical believer in reinvention. So Rachel was the leader of this mastermind, and I joined it. There were several other women in the group, other women who have been on the show, in fact, who were fantastic. It was my first time being in a formal mastermind, and I will say it changed my life, and it certainly changed my business because I went in focused on a totally different business, Chic Rebellion TV at that time, and discussed the idea for support is sexy. At that time, I was just using it as a personal mantra for myself. I had started posting things on social media around this idea of women supporting women and this idea of support is sexy. Having it all doesn't mean doing it all alone. And when I mentioned it within that group, seeing the faces of those women there changed everything for me. And then a subsequent conversation with a special guest of the mastermind, Jen Groover, who's a serial entrepreneur and who was also a guest on episode 109 of the Support is Sexy podcast. I mentioned to Jen and to the group there about Support is Sexy, how I was thinking more about it, how at the time I was thinking about a podcast, I was thinking about a book and all of these things. But just the mere mention of Support is Sexy and the idea that having it all doesn't mean doing it all alone. When I saw Jen Groover's face light up, I said, I have to do this. And that's when I became serious about figuring out how to do this. Now, I'm not saying that never would have happened if I wasn't in a mastermind, but that put me in the environment of women who, one, were all entrepreneurs in one way or another, even if they had full-time jobs and they were starting their coaching business, or they were freelancers and starting another kind of business. Whatever it was, they still were of that mindset, just as I was, figuring out what is the thing, what do I want to do, how do I incorporate that into my life, what am I going to focus on, and all of those things. So masterminds are very powerful. And you can do it, it doesn't have to be in the location where you were. We were all in New York, so that worked for everyone. But people do virtual masterminds. I actually lead a mastermind with women who are in different parts of the country. I have the Support is Sexy mastermind, which is completely virtual. So there are women from all around the world within that group. So there are ways to do it for sure where you can still be connected with people. But for you, if you can find something local or find something online or whatever you have to do to get around a group of women who are, it can be women and men, let me say. There are people who have been in a group that has both. My group in particular had just women. Support is Sexy has just women, but I've been in powerful groups of men and women. So whatever works for you, it really is about people who have the same mindset and who can challenge you in ways that you need to be challenged. So a lot of people call it the hot seat. So when you're in the quote unquote hot seat, you're talking about either something you want to do or something you're having a problem with. Those people should be there to offer advice, but to also hold you to your highest. And that's what it's really about, the whole idea of support networks overall. You want people who don't let you slide and who hold you to your highest. So that is what you want to look for in a mastermind. And keep in mind, you can always start your own if it's you. And I won't say don't have your friends in it, but sometimes our friends can end up being yes people because they love us. Or our friends could be doubters because they love us, in the same way I talked about family. So you have to make sure you're getting around people. And it's good to have people who don't really know all of your backstory. They're really there because of your business. Their entry point is your business or whatever you're trying to create. But do whatever works for you. But a mastermind is a great way to get started in making connections with people. Another source of making connections, and this is something that I have not taken part in, people talk about them all the time, Meetups. There's always meetups, well, here in Atlanta, but everywhere else, I'm sure, meetups around different topics or different interests. Now, the thing that I like about what I see of meetups is that they seem much more casual than some of the other formal, quote unquote, networking events. I don't really do many networking events anymore. Nothing against them. I'm sure they work very well for some people, but I don't do general networking events as much as I used to, say, 10 years ago. But I do like the idea of meetups that seem to be more about just connecting with people either in your area or just connecting with people who have the same interests. And again, it seems more casual. I don't know because I haven't been. But for you, that could be an option. You can go online and look up if there are any meetups in your area, see if it's something that you can be interested in. You go. If you don't like it, you leave. If you love it, you stay, you try other ones. But it is definitely an option. And it's something I'm going to look at. But again, I haven't done it before, so I don't have enough experience to talk about it. But I do know people who say that they do it all the time and they love it. Another example is industry organizations. So whatever industry you're either in or that you want to be in, and in fact, the one you want to be in is usually more important. If there's an industry organization that aligns with what you want to do or want to create with your business, definitely look at ways of joining and ways of being involved. And sometimes these events, sort of like we talked about with networking events, they can make us uncomfortable if you have to go by yourself, you don't have a friend there, which you probably should go by yourself. Otherwise, you'll just end up talking to your friend, right? You're there to connect with people. So with these industry events, some great advice that I've heard from women who have been on the show with just how to connect with people in those environments: ask people about themselves. Now, for me personally, that's something I'm very good at, having been a journalist, but also just because I'm hella curious. And then because I do a podcast that is all about interviewing people. So while I wouldn't get too intimate with asking people questions as I would on a podcast, it's very easy for me to say, so what are you up to? What are you creating in the world? I usually ask people, what are you most passionate about right now? And that kind of is a different way of asking, so what do you do? I have found that it really puts people in a different space when you ask that question in an authentic way, not in a way that feels canned or in a way that feels like I'm just going to ask you this way because it's different. I essentially want to know, yeah, that's great if that's what you do, but what are you passionate about? What are you up to? What are you creating? So there's different ways to go about it. But in any case, looking at industry organizations for the type of business or opportunity that you want to create for yourself is very important and is a great way to connect with people who might be able to either support you, give you ideas, or for you just to see what's going on. What are people talking about? It's also a great way to see if you want to be of service to that community. So it might not even be something where you're going to a group of people that you want to be like, even though that's great as far as what they're creating. You might go to an organization that is your customer, so you can hear about what they want, what their problems are, what kind of things they need solved, what do they need help with, what do they need support with. That's another way of connecting with people. So decide what works for you, but that's another option. Now, for some of us, we might not live in cities or places where we can have a lot of in-person connections with people, not because there's anything wrong with any of the cities that we live in, but I know some of you are in Australia or Singapore or all over the world. Thank goodness. I love it. We have listeners in 97 countries and counting. So where you are might not be as easy to go out and just meet entrepreneurs at a meetup or that kind of thing. It's probably easier than you think. We always think it's harder than it is, right? But just in case it's not, again, you can do things online. There's no excuse. If you can find Wi-Fi, you can connect to people online. So in the same way I mentioned looking at industry organizations, look at Facebook groups that you can be engaged in. Now, Facebook groups have gone crazy right now. I feel like there are so many, and I'm certainly not putting any kind of judgment on it because the Support is Sexy Mastermind is through a Facebook group. It's one of the easiest ways to gather people around a certain mission, a certain intention, and to be able to share in a semi-private environment. So I love Facebook groups. They work, they're open, they're free. So it's a great way to set up a way to connect with people. But for you, if you're wanting to connect with people around a certain topic, go online, go on Facebook if that's a platform that you enjoy. Of course, you want to make sure it's something that you're going to be on regularly and see if there are groups that make sense for you. See if some of your friends or peers or people that you admire or respect are in some of these groups and maybe join them, see how it is, see what the conversation is like. If you decide to stay, make sure that you are engaged. And by engaged, I mean be intentional about giving as much as you ask. So when I go into a group, I try to give whatever I can, or even at least introduce myself in a way that's, hey, let me know if there's any way I can support you. You know, I don't know exactly what everyone needs, but at least I offer that, and then I might ask whatever my question is. So you want to be sure to give feedback, leave comments, whatever you can about things you know about, not randomly, but about things you know about so that you can be engaged. And then you can also ask questions as well so that you get to know people in this group. It's not the same as an in-person connection for sure, but at least it gives you a space to make those connections. And then you could say, possibly, if it makes sense and if it feels safe, hey, I'm in such and such area. Is anyone else in this area? And then meet in a public place where you and other members of the group who might actually be in your area can get together. Again, someplace public, safe, and all of that great stuff. I want you to take care of yourself and be safe. But if it feels right and if it's a way for you to meet with a few people in one area, that could be a possibility as well. If not, talking on Facebook or in the group is a great way to connect with people. Another idea, in the age of the internet, of course, we all know about online courses. I've created them. I have some really great ones coming up that I'll tell you all about, some free courses. But I've created them. I certainly have taken my fair share of free courses and paid courses. Paid a fortune to take some of these courses, but they've all been great. Another thing to think about, though, is offline courses. So whether they're free or you might have to pay a small fee if it's at the local university, or sometimes there's just one-off courses that you can take at all kinds of locations. But look around to see if there are offline courses that you might be interested in, obviously, that you can take, because again, that puts you in an environment of people with the same interests as you would imagine. Of course, you never know for sure, but if they're there, especially if it's a paid course, it's likely that they're interested in that topic as well. So that's something else to think about, and that's something that I've been looking at for specific things that I want to learn. Maybe it's an online course, which is always great, but it'd be good too to be in a classroom setting in the offline course of different things that I want to learn about. I'm fascinated. I don't know if I've ever shared this before on the podcast, but I love psychology. I was an English major in college, but I've always been fascinated by psychology. So that is an example of something that I'd love to study in a classroom setting. Of course, I can do it online, but why not look at if there are ways for me to do that in the classroom? For me, not even necessarily for a degree, but I'm interested in psychology, and I do think psychology could be of support to me in my business, understanding it better, especially emotional intelligence. But not to get too specific. That's just me. But still, think about you. What are you interested in right now? What would you love to learn about? Is there a space for you to take that kind of course or whatever it is offline somewhere? Look into it. I bet you there's a possibility. And another tip that I will share actually comes from an upcoming guest of the Support is Sexy podcast, Tara Winston. So make sure you listen out for that episode. It's coming up soon. One of the things, though, of many that Tara said that really stuck with me was this idea of getting around people who are doing what you want to do, which I hinted at earlier. But it really resonated with me because this idea of, yes, you want to get around people who are at the same level as far as business and things that you're creating. But I don't know, maybe for you, maybe you already do this. You're probably much smarter than I am. But I rarely think about getting around the people who are where I'd like to be. Now, I listen to podcasts and different things, take courses again of people who have experience, and I can quote unquote sort of download that experience. But I haven't been very intentional about putting myself, at least you know what? I'm going to give that some thought. But in this moment of what I can remember, I haven't been very intentional about getting around people who are several steps ahead of me. Does that make sense? Lisa Nichols says that too. You have to get around people who are a few steps ahead of you. You have people, of course, that are at your same level, and then you have people that you're bringing along or bringing up or mentoring and that kind of thing. But being focused on the people who are a few steps ahead of me, I'm thinking about friends and people that I have. I have people who are at very high levels in different ways of their own industries and careers. Maybe I've never been conscious of it, but being intentional about it, as Tara mentioned, I think is so important. So we get very comfortable, of course, around the people that we either know or people who are doing the same things that we're doing. And I think there's value in that because, again, there's a built-in sort of empathy there. But I do think, again, pushing ourselves to get around people who are a few steps ahead of us in whatever kind of way. Maybe you're going to a panel or an event where those people are there. Or maybe you're joining a mastermind where you feel like, oh my God, what am I doing in this room? That's actually one of my goals. I want to be in a mastermind where I think, what am I doing in this room? Am I even supposed to be here? That is where I belong, in a place that pushes me to push myself to take it to another level. Push myself in a good way, though, because again, going back to self-care, but still it challenges you, I guess I should say, challenges you to challenge yourself to go to that next level. So that is a key tip that I think is very important. This idea, again, of looking at where you want to go and how to get around those people, and not to be selfish and just quote unquote, pick those people's brains and that kind of thing, but just to get in that environment. Environment is so important. That's something I didn't put on the list, but all of this actually sort of relates to that. Environment online, environment in person, what we take in. I mean, that's the thing I always talk about with not watching television all the time or thinking about even podcasts. I'm very focused on business podcasts. You be very focused on whatever kind of podcast you want to listen to, but being very conscious of what kind of things we take in our environments. It's very powerful. A lot of us don't realize the impact it has on us. So if you're around people who are supportive of you, but they might not get exactly what you're doing, or they say even the slightest negative things when you're in such a vulnerable space, right? Sometimes I know, speaking for me personally, with my business, or if I'm trying something new or I'm not sure about it and I'm pushing forward and making it happen, but there's a bit of vulnerability there, which is good because I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone. What I don't need at that time is anything negative. Now, feedback is great and feedback is information, but you need to be very conscious, I believe, of what feedback you're taking in and from whom. People giving you feedback about something that they've never done before, that is a little bit difficult to take. Now, again, you be the judge, but I'm just thinking, for me, being conscious of environment, which is why I'm talking about getting around people, doing the things I want to do, moving in the direction I want to move, making it happen in the ways that I want to make it happen. That is the kind of environment that I'm looking forward to being in. And I hope you will join me on challenging yourself to do that for yourself as well, being much more intentional about it. And again, maybe you're already doing this. And if you have tips that you want to share, let me know. And I'm happy to either share them on the podcast or share them on my website, ElayneFluker.com. And you can see what people say are their tips for building your support network. But all in all, we want to get around people who support our kind of crazy. All right. So thank you all so much for listening. I look forward to hearing feedback from you about this. You can email me, of course, Elayne at ElayneFluker.com or on social media at Elayne Fluker at Support is Sexy. Be sure to share this episode with your friends. If you're talking to them about building a support network or starting a mastermind, or you just think it is good advice for getting out there. I want us to have solid support networks. That is what this is all about. Your support network should constantly evolve. It's something that you want to have as a living, breathing thing. It doesn't always have to be the same people. You might have several different support networks. It can look a lot of different ways. But for me, and I hope for you, what we want to do is make sure that we are intentional about adding this as a part of our self-care practice. All right, so thank you so much for listening. You know, I appreciate you. For more episodes, go to supportissexypodcast.com and you can see all the good stuff there. Also, do me a favor and let me know how I can support you. Help me help you. Go to supportissexysurvey.com. Fill out the survey. It's less than 5 minutes. I really want to know your feedback. I'm asking for your feedback because I trust you. Tell me what you're looking for, what you need in your business, what kind of support will help you move forward. This is really so I can understand how to cater the content to be most helpful for you. For any partners that I talk to, I want to be able to say, nope, that's not what my audience is looking for. This is what my audience wants. I want to be very clear, focused, and intentional about making sure that we hit the mark and what you're looking for. Not creating all of this just for me. I certainly enjoy it, but really it's about connecting with all of you and giving you what you want. So help me help you by going to supportissexysurvey.com. All right, so thank you so much again. I will talk to you soon. And until next time, you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.